I'm sorry. Is anybody checking the recordings, Prashant?
Might be, sir. They might be checking.
Okay, you people are not. Yeah, so let us get going so that we can finish off Rousseau today. Okay, I want to finish Rousseau today. You must understand that yesterday we were talking about the German tradition and the impact of the Romanticist tradition on the philosophy of on philosophers in Germany. You must understand those influences on those people came from Rousseau, but that does not mean that we consider Rousseau to be a fully romanticist thinker. And you'll also see that in the German Enlightenment, after the time that Immanuel Kant, uh, after Immanuel Kant, you will find that there is a return of sorts to rationalist thinking. Okay, and that is a modern form of idealism. Modern form of idealism, not the Greek form of idealism that we saw in Plato. We see that in Hegel, the modern form of idealism. That is what we are talking about, right? So that basically uh, means that even though the German Romanticist period had philosophers who were pessimistically inclined, you find that uh, there is a Hegel who follows them, and he not only tries to find solutions to the antinomies that had been constructed by Immanuel Kant's thinking, he also finds solutions to Rousseau's thinking. So Rousseau is also a very big influence on uh, Hegel. And the influence that went from Rousseau onto Hegel is more of a rationalist uh, perspective, more of a rationalist kind of an understanding of things rather than the romanticist or romantic kind of understanding that impacted on people like Arthur Schopenhauer, Immanuel Kant, Schiller, Schelling, all these people. Okay, so you see, Rousseau is a very, very pivotal figure. But yesterday we got cut off when I was talking about the notion of history, which Kant inherited from Rousseau. Okay, and I told you that if you look at the ancient periods, especially, and it's not just the ancient periods, it's there in other periods as well, but in the ancient periods, there is an emphasis on the cyclical nature of history. I gave you the instance of the Greeks, how they treated everything in a degenerative cycle. Both Plato and Aristotle refer back to that. It's a degenerative cycle. And if you look at the Indian yugas, the four yugas, okay, and I told you that we are in the 14th cycle. Before this, there have been 13 cycles. And when adharma exceeds dharma and dharma has no scope anymore, then the world is destroyed. Okay, so that is the thing that I was trying to tell you. And again, it all begins with the Kriti Yuga, goes to the Treta Yuga, then to the Dwapara Yuga, and to the Kali Yuga. So that is the cyclical nature of history that the Indians looked at. And people like Plato said monarchy is the best, then it degenerates into democracy, and from democracy it degenerates into oligarchy and into uh, uh, democracy, which is the worst form of government. So these are the, and then when that happens, again a monarchy comes in. So that's the cycle. Okay, so when you basically look at Rousseau as such, Rousseau is perhaps the first thinker who explicitly changed the notion of history. Okay, he changed the notion of history by saying that history is linear, which means it is an infinite line. It keeps going. Human history is infinite. Okay, it keeps going. But when we talk about this, we have to understand that there is no this thing of history repeating itself. If you ask Rousseau, does history repeat itself? He says no. History does not repeat itself. Okay. And that is where you find the rationalist in Rousseau coming out. Even though he says, and I go to the state of nature in Rousseau, I'll talk about that in a minute. But he doesn't say that we can go back there, which is what all the painters and the poets are saying. Let's go back in time. Let's go back in time and let's go back to nature. That is what people were saying, the romanticists. Rousseau doesn't say that because Rousseau is very, very clear that it is a line. So if it is a line, the line keeps moving only in one direction, which is this way. So you can't go back this way. You can't go back, right? So, sorry about that. You find that Rousseau is somebody who actually spoke for the first time in a number of centuries about history being linear. And this is the thing that influenced Kant. Kant basically said the philosophical pessimism of Kant is his antinomy. This particular antinomy. What is an antinomy? I told you an antinomy, Antinomy. An antinomy is a problem without a solution. Okay, it's a problem without a solution. He says, since history is linear, and this he got from Rousseau, what he says is, as the line is moving and we are trying to understand things, can we understand things as they are happening? We can't. Okay. Let me give you a simple example. This COVID-19 virus, nobody knows when it happened sometime in the year 2019. Some people say it started in in November 2019. Some people say it started in September. But to understand it and to make vaccines or whatever, it has come to January 2021, right? To understand it and come to and try to make a vaccine, it has come to January 2021. Now, nobody is giving you guarantees that this vaccine will work. Nobody is giving you guarantees. Nobody is saying it even works 90% surety they are not able to give. Whether it is AstraZeneca, Oxford, Moderna, Pfizer, Bharat Bio, any of these people, Serum Institute of India, none of them are able to give you. Everybody is saying it's probably 60%. The more optimistic ones are saying 70%. And that is why they are saying even if you've taken a vaccine and people are afraid of side effects because one doesn't know what will the vaccination do to you if you have taken the vaccine, what are the side effects likely to be? You don't know these things. So what these people are basically claiming is that it's a 70%, up to a 70%. That is the people who are what should I say? Those people who are being optimist. The pessimists are saying that it probably won't work at all because unlike bacteria, which don't change, and therefore vaccinations against bacteria work very well. But when you give vaccinations to viruses, okay, when you give vaccinations to viruses, the strain changes. People say that the strain that originally came out supposedly from Wuhan, that strain may not be there anymore. It might have undergone several mutations. Within India, in different parts of India, it might have undergone several mutations. Okay, within India, it might have undergone several mutations. And we have seen a new mutation come up in Great Britain. We are again seeing, even today's papers say that people in Europe are finding another wave coming and therefore they are shutting down again. America, just a few days ago, the funeral homes were full of dead bodies and people said, what will we do with these? Please take them and finish them off, burying them or whatever you want to do with them. I don't know how we have escaped this. Maybe it's just that our lack of hygiene right from the beginning has given us a robust immunity system. That is the only explanation I have. Okay, because we eat from bundis, we eat from everywhere. People don't wash their hands, they don't do anything. So that gives immunity. That's probably why we haven't been as hard hit by this virus as the others. But even here, there are different strains. People may be asymptomatic, but there are different strains. So, will this vaccine work now? Covishield or Covaxin or whatever Pfizer calls its vaccine, Moderna, will they work? No, no guarantee. Why? Because the virus may have mutated, and we don't know how many mutations it has undergone and what stage is it at now. We don't know. That is the problem with linearity. Not problem. That's the thing that you see with linearity. So when you have found in January 2021, you have found a vaccine, let us say for a strain that was there in April 2020. But today, that strain, is it still there or has it moved here? If it has moved here, then this vaccine doesn't work. And that is why everybody is saying, irrespective of you taking a vaccine or not, it is absolutely essential that you continue to wear masks. It's absolutely essential that you continue to sanitize your hands and maintain a physical distance. Social distance is an awkward phrase. Physical distance, keep 6 feet away minimum. Okay, that's what they are saying. Why? Because we don't know if this will work at all, and if it works, to what extent it works. We don't know. This is a classical Kantian antinomy. While you are understanding this knowledge and history is, sorry, not knowledge, history is progressing like this in a line. You have come here, and now you're trying to understand what's happening here. While you're understanding what's happening here, history has moved like this. So when you have understood this, now this much has already happened. So you don't have knowledge of this. So you again chase till here. While you're trying to understand this here, then it goes further. So we don't really have complete control over knowledge because of the linearity. Okay. While you're trying to understand something that is happening, something else has already started happening. So you might understand something that is happening, or you think it is happening now. This is what Hegel called the cunning of reason. He thinks you think you're understanding things as they have happened, but while you are thinking that you are understanding things as they are happening, other things have already started happening. Other things have already started happening. Okay, so the antinomy that you find in Kant is precisely this philosophical pessimism that we cannot ever understand fully the things that are happening in history. Because while we are understanding one thing, more progression of history is happening. And this conception he picked up from Rousseau. But Rousseau is not very pessimistic like Kant. In fact, if you compare him to Kant and to the German tradition, he's not pessimistic at all. He's really not pessimistic. Okay. His works, Emile and the Social Contract, are definitely indications of his faith in the rational ability of the human being. But you must not confuse his faith in the rational ability of the human being to that of the faith that the Anglophone philosophers like John Locke, specifically John Locke, and later on along with John Locke, Adam Smith, a little later, Ricardo, Thomas Malthus. Okay, he didn't share that kind of optimism. He didn't share that kind of optimism. And he had no optimism whatsoever in capitalism. He did not believe in that because he said capitalism is a bad system. Why is it a bad system? Because it generates, I told you, the paradox, the self contradiction of poverty amidst plenty, as opposed to what John Locke said, that capitalism is a solution to poverty. Rousseau says capitalism generates social wealth, yes, but there is poverty in capitalist society. That is what is his main concern. That is his main concern. And Rousseau is the philosopher that Immanuel Kant Hegel, and Marx are impressed by. They are trying to find answers to the questions that Rousseau raised. In fact, the whole of Marxist theory is an attempt to find an answer to this paradox that Rousseau stated of poverty amidst plenty. Rousseau didn't give us a satisfactory answer. He pointed out the problem, but didn't give us a satisfactory answer about how this is happening. The entire exercise that Marx does is to find an answer to this paradox of poverty amidst plenty. That is what you need to remember. Hegel, Rousseau constructs a triad. I'm going to come to that. Family, bourgeois civil society, and the state. The same triad is used in Hegel. The same triad is used in Hegel. And he said Rousseau's attempt was great, but it was not something that could be achieved. So he said, I have a better solution. But he picks up Rousseau. He picks up this antinomy. He picks up this antinomy that was posited by Kant and the notion of the linearity of history and finds an alternative explanation. But that's not necessary right now, so I'm not going to go into that. So while we say there is a great rationalist element in Rousseau's thinking, this is a very different form of rational thinking. Why is it different? Because it lacks this primary element of control of nature. Rousseau did not believe we can control nature. Rousseau didn't believe that. Rousseau believed nature was far more powerful than us. Far, far more powerful than us. And he's also somebody whose humanism is not this unfettered thing like what Alberti and all said. We can do anything. There's nothing that the human being cannot do. Rousseau didn't share that kind of thing. That is why he wrote Emile. That is why he wrote Emile. He believed that if you need to lead a proper life, if you need to have some kind of humanism in you, then you need to be educated. By that, I don't mean getting degrees. Educated about life. Okay, today we all have degrees, but very few of us are educated. Osmania produces PhDs by the dozens, and there is a Dravidian university in Kuppam which in 1 year produced 8,000 PhDs. None of them know anything anyway. So that's not what we mean by education, not this formal thing that we are going through. Education about life, how to face the challenges of life. That is the thing that is very important for Rousseau. So while he does believe that human beings are capable of finding solutions, he will not say that we have complete control over everything around us, including nature. He does not believe in the human-centric universe. He doesn't believe that nature is there for us Trees are not there for us to chop and take them away. Animals are not there for us to indiscriminately kill them. No, he still believes in the power of nature while he's being rational. So he is somebody who's opposed, though a lot of people will tell you there's a great deal of liberalism in Rousseau as well, but you can take it safely for granted that his form of liberalism, if at all you can call it that, has nothing to do with the kind of liberalism that you saw in John Locke or the liberalism that came after Rousseau, which is utilitarianism. It's not like that at all. It's a completely different form. His humanism is also very, very different. He believed in the potential of the human being. He believed in the potential of the human being, but he did not think that the human being can conquer everyone and everything around him, manipulate history, manipulate nature. No, none of those things are there in Rousseau. Even the social contract mechanism that you find in Rousseau is completely different from the social contract mechanisms that you find in Hobbes and in Locke. There is a state of nature in all of them. The state of nature in Hobbes is a war of all against all. It's a pre-social state of nature. Human beings come up like mushrooms do from under the ground in the state of nature. That's what Hobbes said. But please remember that was an experimental state of nature. Okay. As was John Locke's idea of a state of nature with two stages in it and one stage having money in it. That is also an experimental kind of a thing. In Rousseau, it is not experimental like that at all. There may be an experimental dimension to it. There may be, but it is not experimental like this, like it is in Hobbes and Locke. So what does Rousseau say about the, what does Rousseau talk about when he talks about the state of nature? Well, the state of nature is where it is closer to a chronological state of nature. Closer. The man is not yet civilized. Okay. So those who talk about a chronological state, Marx, for example, talks about a chronological state of primitive societies where people lived in nature and they were hunter-gatherers. That is what Marx says about people in the primitive stage of their life, where they lived in small communes, small groups. Okay, so they were hunter-gatherers. Slowly they turned nomadic agriculturists. Marx is very charitable to these people in the description of these people. He calls that an equalitarian society. But other people, when they talk about progress, all these people again now subscribe to this Rousseauian idea of progress, linearity. They believe that the present is better than the past, and the future will be better than the present. That is what they believe in. Okay? The future will be better than the present, and the present is already better than the past. In the 19th century, people could not fly. Now you can take, today's paper says, the first direct flight from Chicago to Hyderabad landed early this morning. That's what the newspaper says. So people will say, could we have done this 150 years ago? Could we have done this 200 years ago? And this non-stop flying, could we have done it 30 years ago? We couldn't have flown non-stop 30 years ago from America to India. Air routes have changed. Now there is a thing called a polar route. I don't know if you're aware of that. Do a Google search and it'll give you. You know, the shortest way to fly from one place to another is by going towards the pole, not flying like this, but flying like this to the pole and then coming like this. So it is in the shape of a hyperbole or a parabola, if you like. So we have found new ways of navigating, and therefore we are now able to have this whole thing, which is what we call this whole idea of non-stop flights. Hyderabad to Chicago, Bangalore to San Francisco. You can now go non-stop, right? So we have made progress. We have made progress. And in my childhood, we had to wait for years and years and years before we could get a color telephone. A telephone. Where the whole world was seeing color television, multi-channel. In India, we didn't even have television. And when it came black and white. It's only with the Asiad in 1982 that we shifted to the color television. The last country, India has this distinction of being the last country to shift to color television, the last country to shift to multi-channel television. Okay, so have we not made progress now? Each family has 3, 4 cell phones. At one time, one household didn't have a phone. There were so many households that didn't have phones. Now we have cell phones. Each of us have our own cell phone. So this is called progress, especially by people who belong to the positivist school of Auguste Comte. So what is Rousseau's take on this? Rousseau says, yes, there is progress. But he says progress is like a coin that has two sides. One side which is a nice side, a good side, and the other side which is the ugly side, the bad side of progress. So what is the bad side of progress? Poverty amidst plenty. Take the case of Mumbai, Dhirubhai Ambani and his family of whatever, 4, 5, 6 people live in a 24-storied house. And if you go to one of those floors, you can see the biggest slum in Asia, Dharavi. That's the biggest slum in Asia. Okay. So while you're producing Dhirubhai Ambani's, while you're producing Gautam Adani's with crony capitalism, all these things are happening. But you're also producing poverty. You're also producing the slums. When water came, when the rains happened, I think I sent you pictures. My ground floor, 20 inches of water came into my tenant's house in the ground floor. But that's okay. They are not very poor people, so they could manage. Their loss was minimum. But there is a basti nearby where and they don't have places where they can neatly stack away things. What happened in that basti? They lost their Aadhaar cards. They lost their ration cards, the white ration cards. They lost their school certificates. So people like us, we were in the second floor. We escaped this. It was just an inconvenience. But those people, what about them? Now they have to go and apply for all those documents again. They're all coming to me. Sir, how to get these? I believe it came in the newspaper that they will not trouble us to get these again. I said, yes, please go and contact so and so. I found out who to contact and how to get into. So I'm not bragging. That's not the point here. But what I'm trying to tell you is that we are making progress. They too have cell phones, but they don't have the quality of life that I have. And I don't have the quality of life that other people have. I'm not a very rich person. I'm better off than many more. And I thank God every day for that. But there are also people who are much, much better off than me. My colleagues in the department, many of them are much better off than me, though they think I'm rich because I come from an upper caste background. But so what I'm trying to tell you is Rousseau is somebody who shows you two sides. And that is why his idea of rationalist civilization, his idea of progress are very, very different from what we are used to. That somehow our lives are getting better every day. Rousseau will say some people's lives are getting better every day, while other people's lives are not getting better every day. And that is why Rousseau embarks on this social contract. The social contract in Rousseau is completely different from what you saw. His state of nature is different, but the state of nature is almost inconsequential. It is the social contract that is of consequence. Even if you ignore the state of nature in Rousseau, it is fine. Okay? Noble savage is what he called people in the state of nature. And he also said, man is born free, but everywhere in chains. When you're born, you're free.